Firstly, just a quick thanks to everyone that submitted questions. I think I'm pretty straightforward and honest, so I'll do my best to answer them as comprehensively as possible. And as always, if anybody isn't happy with the answers provided, then feel free to give me a shout, and I'll do my best to give you the information that you need. But let's go. So, first question is, what special challenges come with being promoted? So, there are a number of challenges that come with being promoted, some of which are intended, some of which aren't. So when I think about I guess some of the more standard ones you'd expect is that, look, we've gone from being a side that was one of the, always one of the fancied sides at step four. If we were talking about, if we were still in that league now and they'd be coming out with all of the sort of the supporters' expectations for who'd be towards the top end of the league, we'd be one of those names. I think that when we were playing teams, they kind of managed, or the managers managed and set their teams up accordingly. So what we saw was there are a lot of teams where maybe they sat deep, a lot of teams where they maybe relied on set pieces to try and get points from us. And what we're going to see now is that we've gone from being one of those sides at the top end to a side where maybe the teams who have been at the top end traditionally of this step three league that we've gone into will view us very much as a place where they must go and get points if they're going to achieve what they want to achieve. So that's a big shift in mindset from I guess more in terms of how we prepare for those games. For us though, I think we'll embrace that. I think the way that we've kind of built this side and the squad, and the way that the squad kind of thinks about things, it probably won't change too much for us, because we always had the view that we needed to go out and earn the respect of the opponents, and we needed to, earn that territorial advantage that we wanted. We needed to work hard to try and impose ourselves on the opposition. So that will probably be, some of the more expected end, I guess, of the scale. The other side of it is that, you move from a league where the geographical footprint was, what it was, and then you move now into a league where predominantly most of your games are to the south and west. And so it does mean that for some players who were probably right on the periphery of the region that we were kind of covering before, the traveling and, the distances that we have to travel and the direction that we have to travel in just doesn't work for them logistically. So you have this squad that helps you to achieve your goal, and then all of a sudden, by virtue of that, some of those players are now no longer able really to make it work in terms of committing and playing for Marlow. So that's an unintended consequence. It is a challenge because, we have lost a couple of players where, the travel was a big contributing factor. And it means that we need to sort of rebuild and sort of patch those areas of the squad. So, like I said, big challenge on the pitch will be sides not showing us as much respect, us needing to earn the respect a bit more and go out there and prove ourselves again at a step three level, and an unintended consequence of the logistics and the geography of the league, meaning that there's some players where it just doesn't work for them, and we need to just understand that and accept it and thank them for their efforts so far on this journey with Marlow, and hope that at some point in the future we can kind of make that happen again. Next question, what will it take to keep us up and then build from there in seasons to come? So to keep us up, I think the main, look, and that's I guess the kind of main thing. I think in reality, we probably start every season exactly the same. I think we start every season thinking about, right, let's try and get points on the board, and as many points on the board as quickly as possible. And we probably won't be alone, or I won't be alone in terms of managers, or we won't be alone in terms of management teams that then look, probably fast forward to when you've got to about 10 games so far in the season, and you have a look back and you see where you are and see where you've got to, have a look at the other teams around you, have a look at who's doing well and who isn't, and then you decide as to whether or not your strategy at that point is working. So to keep us up, I think we need to adapt really, really quickly to this league. I think what we will find is that, the players are more physically mature, definitely more able and naturally better players. I think they're more tactically and technically aware. I think we'll probably find that mistakes that we made last year that went unpunished won't be unpunished this year. And we might find that it's harder for us to create opportunities and to score as many goals as we did last year. So to keep us up, first and foremost, like I said, our adaptation to this new league and the opponents that we're facing needs to happen very, very quickly. We need to make the necessary adjustments and adapt quickly as a management team. I think also there's a piece where we need to learn a lot more about our opponents, which is kind of some of the work that we're doing now, learn a lot more about the opponents we're going to face and to try and make sure that we're as well prepared as possible. That's something that's been really, really positive for us over the last couple of years is our preparation going into matches. And we need to make sure that we can kind of replicate that and improve on that even this year. So that's what I think it will take to keep us up. I think there'll be patches and periods where it will be difficult for us. And we need to be able to make sure that we come out the other side of those difficult periods because they will happen inevitably. And then to kind of help us to build more moving forward, I think we have all of those ingredients already in the squad. What you really want is a squad where, there is a good from an age perspective in terms of, relatively young, generally through the squad. That will mean that you've got players who are able to come in this year, work hard, play well, adapt to the level, and then next year as they continue to progress, as they get physically stronger and develop physically, they'll also have more experience at the level. And so that will mean from our perspective that, we have an opportunity to get better the year after. So most important thing is to make sure that we win as many games as possible this year, secure as many points as possible, get that done as quickly as possible. And look, if it happens, if we had a great start to the season and it happens early and we were able to look and say, look, we make an outside run for the playoffs, that would be absolutely brilliant. If it means that we're going to go to the last game of the season to secure our Step 3 status, then, that too would be satisfactory. The ultimate aim is to make sure that we kind of stay up, and we want to try and do that as quickly as possible. What are the goals for the new season? How the preparation's going? So yeah, look, goals for the new season are first and foremost, we want to stay up. We want to stay in the league. Last year and the year before, I think I've been pretty clear and unashamed and, I'm unwavering about the fact that I wanted to win the league, wanted to get promoted. Very clear at the moment about, our target this year is to make sure firstly that we stay up. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not ambitious and we wouldn't take a run at the playoffs or the league title if it came. However, what we will focus on is getting the points that we need to get as quickly as possible to secure our Step 3 status first. And then we'll look ahead and say, right, okay, how quickly have we done it? What is reasonable there for us to be able to achieve with the games that we have left? We understand, as I said before, that there are going to be some tough patches for us because there are some good sides in this league and we're going to need to make some adjustments and we're going to need to learn some lessons and we're going to get some harsh lessons along the way. But I absolutely believe in the quality of the squad that we've assembled and the guys that have got us up. And I'm really looking forward to working with them next season. And I think we can definitely shock one or two people. However, goals for the season remain: get as many points as possible, as quickly as possible, secure the Step 3 status, and then look at where we can go from there with the remainder of the season that we have once we've achieved that. Are we doing season tickets again this year? Yes, absolutely doing season tickets again. I don't have the prices to hand. Hopefully someone can just sort of populate them on the bottom of this video. But look, what I will say is the last few years, possibly since COVID, has been, there's been a huge transformation in terms of the feel of the club. I think we've seen that we've got a lot more regular supporters, people that come and, watch the team and support the team on a regular basis. And I'm talking, the vast majority of that at home. And it does make a huge difference. I think it makes a huge difference for the players that are on the pitch, helps them to get over the line sometimes in those tight games. It really does give you the extra sort of 1 or 2%. I think also just that general feeling of, the players and supporters interacting and engaging, whether it's on social media platforms like this or in the bar after games. I think it's been a huge impact for the overall squad. So, and the overall club, sorry. So for me, yes, we'll continue to do the season tickets. Really would appreciate as many people as possible coming down to support as regularly as possible and help us to just build on what we've done so far. So there was another question about whether or not the budget had been increased for this year. So look, I think that the finances of non-league football are always quite a sort of almost a taboo subject. But I think, look, it's fair to say that we know at Marlow we will never be the biggest payers in the league, and I think that we all accept that. I think that, there are some clubs out there who have, someone who stands behind them as a rich benefactor or whatever else, and they pump loads of money in, and that sometimes does and sometimes doesn't lead to them being successful. And absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you've got a huge budget and you've got the ability to kind of go and, pay players whatever they want, and allows you to get the players that you want at the price point that you want, then absolutely fine. We're a club that hasn't been built like that. I think what we achieved last season in terms of winning the playoffs was, the culmination of years of sort of more sustainable approach to non-league football. We will kind of rebuild our squad. We'll take players that are wanting to prove themselves at a given level, and we will give them a platform to do that. And I think what we saw last year was a culmination of that. I think what it also breeds is a huge togetherness within the squad, because we don't have any sort of, in inverted commas, big time Charlies. We don't have anybody out there who's picking up huge sums of money from the club. And so what I would say is the budget has been increased from last year's number. So yeah, the money that we have, or the expense budget that we have this season versus last season, is higher. However, like I said, the position is the same. Is we're not going to be the biggest players in the league. We understand that. We know that. We're not complaining about that. We embrace that, and we're ready to just work within the parameters that have been set. And I've spoken to all of the players from last season and the players that I've spoken to about coming in and joining us this season, which hopefully you'll hear about soon. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody understands where we are, and we look forward to sort of moving ahead on that basis. So yes, the budget has been increased. No, we're not going to be the biggest payers in the league, but we're happy and we're good to go. Question about outgoings and incomings. In terms of, will there be a lot of players moving out of the squad, and what's happening in terms of recruitment on the way in? So look, yes, we have had a few players that will be moving on after what was a hugely successful season for us. Some of whom have been announced already, some of whom you'll hear about in the coming days. So I guess on the players that have already sort of commented, or the news is already out. So Jordi Ndozid, who scored the first goal in the playoff final, came in towards the end of last season. Huge impact in such a short space of time. Did exactly what I'd asked him to do. Did exactly what he and I had discussed when we were bringing him into the team. And, really pleased that he was able to help us get over the line. And, he lives in southeast London. He's, it can be difficult for him sort of travel wise. And, look, he goes absolutely with my blessing. He's, he kind of came in as a player who I'd seen a couple of times when he played against us, and was really hugely impressed by. And then he kind of left as a man who I had the opportunity to work with and have a huge amount of respect for. And, really pleased, like I said, that we're able to have, this kind of short time with him in the Marlow squad, and hope that in the future I'm able to work with him again, because, he's an absolute quality player on the pitch and quality individual off it. Josh Bourne, again, someone who's been at the club for the last few years, and absolute 100%er for me. Worked really hard every single time that you put him on the pitch. You'd struggle to find someone who has higher fitness levels than Josh. I say that, and then I think of sort of Ben Mully or whatever else. But Josh is right at the very top end. Looks after himself really well. I think big window into his sort of mental strength and his general approach to looking after himself was when he got injured this season. From the first week of his injury, he was in working with Anna every single week, really pushing himself just to make sure that he got back as quickly as he could. And then he got back into, to help us get over the line towards the end of the season. So again, a player I have a huge amount of respect for. Really appreciate the time that he worked with us at the club. I'm sure he'll go on to do great things. And again, someone I can just say thank you for his contribution. I think it's also probably right to highlight the fact that it's highly likely that David Rogowski will play his football elsewhere next season. David came in a couple of years ago, and from the very first session, absolutely his quality was clear. But I think what you also saw was someone that just got on with his work, no complaining, no moaning, just got on with it, worked really hard. Last season, really pushed his body, picked up a couple of injuries, and then probably found it difficult towards the sort of the middle sort of third of the season, and then finished really strongly. And then this season, what we saw was kind of the rewards of the hard work that he put in the year before, because he came back in, had a great pre-season, and then went on to score 45 goals in all competitions. Now, for me as a manager, hugely pleasing, because, you know, week in, week out, we've had someone at the front end of the team who, you know, you can rely on if, you know, when you need a goal. And I think it really helped us, and it was fitting that, you know, he kind of got that final goal in the playoff final. What it also means is, though, that other people will be alerted to the natural, you know, sort of talent and quality that he has. I think it's right and it's understandable, and, you know, totally no issue for me that, you know, he'd received some really, really, really big offers. Some offers that we just, you know, as a club at Marlow, we're just not in a position to compete with. But you know, I think it's right, and I think he's deserved, and he's earned his opportunity to kind of have that sort of financial reward for taking to the pitch. And so I can only thank David for the work that he's done. He's kind of contributed to the Marlow cause over the last couple of years. Really enjoyed working with him. I hope that at some stage again I can work with him in the future. But, you know, someone's going to get a great player, and for me, it's just about me making sure that we try to move the squad forward on try and do what we can to fill the huge shoes that fill David's huge shoes, really. In terms of next year and players coming in, so we will have a number of players coming in to join the squad. I can't really name names now because the ink isn't dry on the paper, and I'm a manager that prefers to have that done before I start to announce things. What I can say is that there are, you know, a handful of players that are going to be coming in to join the squad, all of whom meet as, you know, a certain criteria or match the profile of players I like to work with. You know, players who are, you know, hungry to prove themselves at the level, players who are hungry to develop, like I said, prove themselves at the level and then move on again and try and bounce up higher. And just players who are 100%ers, you know, good characters. When I've spoken to people that have played with them before, or managers that have managed them before, all the boxes were ticked. And so I'm excited about what we're bringing into the changing room. I'm excited about what they can help us to do in the areas they can help us to improve. But I'm also excited about those players that are returning, that have been part of the squad, you know, last year and the year before, in some cases, where they are naturally better players, you know, coming into this season than they were at the back end of coming into the last season. And I've got no doubt that as a squad, you know, we'll see a natural improvement anyway, and we'll rise to the challenge. So yeah, there'll be a few ins and outs. There may even be one or two more people sort of heading out. But like I said, in terms of what we've brought in and the quality we've been able to bring in to kind of fill some of those gaps that have been created, but also to naturally improve and up the level of the whole squad, means that, yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to the season ahead. And I think as supporters, you'll be pleased with the work that we've done. Next question is, why don't players from the 23s get looked at? So the players from the 23s are being looked at and monitored and reviewed constantly. This happens in a number of ways. So firstly, we've got Harry as the manager, Harry and Matt working hard as a management team to continually look at those players and kind of highlight to me the players that they think are ready or close to being ready to sort of help the first team squad. You know, have to remember that Harry, before taking the job as the under-23s manager, before we even created that team, was a member of my management team regarding running the first team. So he knows what I'm looking for. He understands the criteria that, you know, kind of I need the players to meet before they make the step up. So that's a great, you know, conduit for me as a manager, to know that he's there and that he's looking at those players all the time with the eye and understanding exactly what it needs before he can kind of knock the door and push them towards me at my side. And it's great because he does do that. He's a huge champion for the players that are within his environment, and I trust his judgment. So when he comes to me and says, "Look, this guy or this guy is doing well," then I'm in a position to kind of bring them in and look at them. And I guess that brings on to the second way in which we kind of monitor the 23s. So we all train together on a Thursday at Cox Green. So that first hour, whilst Steads and Phil and Birdie and the guys are kind of putting the first team through their paces, I quite often am over with Harry and Matt and watching how those players are training, getting the heads up from them in terms of who has done well, who I need to look at, And then, quite often we'll invite some of those players in to do the second hour of the session with the first team and just see how they get on and how they adapt and how they kind of show up. Well, that also means that when we do bring those players into the first team environment, it isn't a huge unknown. They're aware of the players, the first team players. The first team players are aware of them, and it makes the whole transition a lot easier. During the course of last season, a number of players kind of made their debuts. So Zach Rogers made his debut away at Uxbridge. As part of the first team squad there. Brighton Morrison made his first team debut in the County Cup. We had Tayfan, who's been involved in the squad, very, very close to kind of getting him on the pitch a couple of times this season. He's done really, really well, a player that I quite like in the 23s. Alfie Corrick as well, who made his full first team debut in the last home game of the season against Hanworth Villa. Acquitted himself really, really well. And so, this pre-season, he'll be in with the first team and going through the first team pre-season with us. And we'll see how he does. But there is absolutely always these players being sort of reviewed and the opportunities for them to come and train and us to see them at close quarters at that point. There's also the view that when the first team when the 23s are playing, that the match is either being recorded so that I can kind of watch and review afterwards, or with a number of the home games where Steads will go down and he'll watch and he'll have a look, and then he'll come back and say, right, I think this player or this player is not too far off, or we should maybe look at this one to kind of come in and help us. There are, like I said, there are a number of different ways in which those 23s are kind of getting reviewed and propelled forward, and their cases being made for them to get inclusion into the first team squad and on the match day. So absolutely, we'll continue to do that as well. And I think with the under 18s coming in and kind of bolting in underneath the 23s, I think that just makes the whole thing even stronger. The whole, the whole pathway for a player right the way through the Marlow setup. But the 23s players are always being considered, always being reviewed, and their cases are always being put to me and being championed by Harry and Matt. Question is quite similar to the under 23s one, which is there any considerations to promoting players from the youth? So look, I'm a manager that will play any player regardless of their age if I think they're good enough. So if a player is 38 years old, 39 years old, 40 years old, and I think they're good enough and they're going to help us to win games, help us to achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves, then I'll play them. If there are players that are 17 and they're good enough and I think that they're going to help us to achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves, then I'm going to play them. I think there is this kind of view that young players don't get an opportunity at non-league clubs, or maybe people think that about Marlow, but that's absolutely not true. I think if we look last season, we had Seb, who came in and played a lot of games at centre half for us, 17 going on 18. I think you flip back to the year before, Eli played a hell of a lot of games for us at, again, 19 years old, coming into the side, having played at step 5 before. So from my end, they're just two examples, and then look at the last 2 years where we finished third and then we finished second and got to 2 cup finals. I think we've had a hugely successful last couple of years, and kind of key components of the squad at that time have been players that are, inverted commas, young players. So absolutely, if players are good enough and they look like they can do a job and we believe that they can help us to do a job, then we will include them. If we also think that we have the opportunity to include young players to aid their development at a time that's right for them, right for the 23s, right for all the under 18s, and right for the first team, then absolutely we'll look to do that as well. So loved working with young players, love helping them to kind of improve and develop and push on, and hopefully we get the opportunity to work with a few more this season. Next question is about Marlow FC Minors and the girls team. So firstly, look, absolutely love the fact that we've got this big youth section that backs up the under 18s now, then the under 23s and the first team. I love the fact that we've got this huge pathway and a lot of the youth sides in there. For me, whilst I am predominantly sitting here, kind of conversing with you guys as the first team manager of Marlow, I'm also the manager of an under 9s / under 10s team. So the whole grassroots thing, the whole, youth football piece is hugely important to me. I manage that side, ordinarily on a Saturday morning before I get across to the Marlow game. have some really good players there that I love working with and I love developing. And the fact that at that stage it's very pure, they're playing for the love of the game, and it's up to me to try and help and educate and develop them as young players. Keep it enjoyable, but also help them to sort of progress in whatever that route may take them, wherever it takes them, then that's the case. But that means that the whole Marlow piece and the whole of the Marlow FC Minors piece that backs up the first team, again, is hugely important to me. So what you've seen is towards the back end of last season, we had a couple of the teams come in and join the first team for training on a Thursday night for half an hour or an hour. A little bit of fun for us, for the boys. A little bit for the youth players that are playing in those youth sides. What I hope is that kind of builds that that strong relationship, that affinity with the first team, and I hope that it has a big positive impact on them. And I'd love to continue to do that during the course of the season. It's also something that we've spoken about before, about the first team players going down to training with some of those youth sides, some of the Marlow FC Minors sides, just so that they can kind of go and join in, and again try and embed that that deep relationship between the first team and the youth section, which I think is hugely important. At the end of the day, in years to come, long after I'm gone, long after all these players are gone in the first team, those youth players are the ones that are going to be putting on the blue shirt of Marlow, and it's important that we look after them and we make sure that they're all plugged in and all feel as though they're part of this club and this huge thing that we're building at the moment. There was also a question about whether or not I would support or had any views on a girls team or an all girls team or an all women's team, and I'd absolutely love that. I think as a club, like I said, we built out the section from the youth, 18s, 23s first team. I think it probably feels right that in the not too distant future we have a women's team, we have a sort of a pathway for girls leading into that women's team, and I'd love to do anything I can to help facilitate that. So if there is anyone out there that has a proposal about how we might be able to bring that all together, then absolutely please let me know. Would love to be involved in helping that come about. And also to me, look, I've got two sons, but I've also got two daughters, and with the huge explosion we've seen in recent years about the WSL and the fact that you can see top flight women's football much more readily on TV now, I think there's been a huge uptick in terms of the number of girls that do want to play. And I think it's only right that we, as a club, help to support and facilitate that. And then, like I said, if we can run a women's team alongside the men's team and, have some girls teams that build a pathway into that, I think that'd be a fantastic thing for Marlow, for everybody at Marlow to try and help us to achieve. So, let's try and get it done. So look, thank you. Thanks to everyone that contributed questions. We have tried to sort of cobble them together where there was sort of 2 or 3 questions that might have been very, very similar. Always happy to do stuff like this. So if it's something that might be of interest for us to do more in the season, then absolutely. If you'd like to hear from some of the other management team and not me, then great. I'm also happy to share that load round, and we'll get some of those guys on some of these kind of things. But again, just a big thank you all for your support this season. Really meant a lot. Helped to get us over the line. Unfortunately, couldn't get over the line in the cup final, but we'll look to go one better next year. And look forward to seeing you all after a great summer and after the guys have worked really hard during pre-season. So I'll see you all soon.